we've already kind of touched on Glam Slam already, that, Glam Slam was really, your idea to kind of have a venue that would actually be something that would be a focal point for Minneapolis, and the entertainment industry would be like the piece de resistance of a performing facility, a concert hall type of scenario. Just and it also held, if I remember correctly, 800 more people than First Avenue did. So I imagine that you setting up Glam Slam, the initial design process of it was, we need to do what First Avenue is doing, but better. Um, and so do you kind of feel like, even though Glam Slam is no more, do you kind of feel like it accomplished what it really needed to accomplish at the time when it was opened?
Yeah, I think it definitely made a difference. It made its mark in its time. Um, and but again, I give credit to a lot of the staff and employees that we had in running it and developing it. It's not one person. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just Prince. And that whole thing. The timing of it was good. I would say that had I had more experience in running a club, um, which took me years to figure out because I really wasn't there during those first, 3 or 4 years that I was running Paisley. Um, it could have been almost like a different kind of thing. I appreciate what the House of Blues was able to do. And we were kind of following that
Yeah.
model, but again, for those entrepreneurs out there, you can't open up a business and not run the business. You need to be there. And I just didn't have the ability to be there and whatnot. So yeah, it was successful for what it was. Um, and when I switched it over to the Quest, um, I had that place for 16 years. So, for those in the nightclub life, having a venue for 16 years, um, the capacity of it was 2,200 people doing that week after week for 16 years.
It's
Yeah, it
amazing.
was a success.
Because Prince sold Glam Slam Club to you, and then you renamed it Quest. Um,
No, no, actually, so I own the one. Prince never owned the one in Minneapolis. And this, again, speaks more to his generosity. He knew, and I knew, that more people were going to come to that club if it was a Prince club than it was
Prince
a
Club.
Gilbert Davison club.
gotcha.
I knew on my side that he needed to expand his brand. Prince needed to be more than just a pop star. And so it would help him by showing that he has this business acumen and that he was, growing in his brand and what he was doing. So it worked for him also to have a club. With
Mm.
that said, and for those people out there that own a business, think about Prince owning of a nightclub. Think about somebody of his stature actually owning one. It it from a practical side, it wouldn't make sense only because with the lawsuits and everything that would come flying through, suddenly he has this exposure. I
Yeah.
wasn't going to put him in that position. His business manager at the time was definitely not, and his lawyers were not going to put him in a position. And they made that clear to me. So
Mm.
we opened up the club I opened up the club in Minneapolis, and then we had a franchise in Yokohama, Japan, which a lot of people don't know about. Actually, I found a tape of that club the other day, and that club was beautiful. It was just as big as the one here in Minneapolis. It had a restaurant. It was retrofitted from what it was, but uh, we had that one. And then Prince he did want to have his own clubs. And I was reluctant to do it. To be honest, I didn't want to do it because, again, how we're going to run this. I was already doing this one. Um, I had Paisley, and, you know, I knew he wasn't going to go down
Yeah.
and, run a club in Miami and run a club in
Right.
Los Angeles. But I put those together. That's something that he wanted to do. And what I would do is I would have my general managers from here go to those other satellites, what I call them satellites, and then they would get those up and running and function. So all of it
did kind of run out of the Minneapolis venues in one way, shape, or form. So we did that. So in the club in Miami, strange. It was funny when I signed off on the contract for that venue. The owner who we purchased the club from says, "You know, it's really weird you guys bought this venue." And I was like, "Well, why do you say that?" And he goes, "Well, because this is where you had the end of the Purple Rain tour party." And I knew I had been in that space before, but I never made the connection to it. And when
Wow.
he said it, it all came back to him. I'm like, oh my God, that it is the place. You know, I remembered it was a movie theater and it had a balcony, and I thought it was one of the coolest places I'd ever been. Yeah. So, you know, what, 8 years later, 6 years later, I ended up buying it. Um, 8 years later. And then the one in Los Angeles was actually it's owned by a guy named Jim Kalash. This great guy. Hi, Jim, if you ever see this. He owned it, and it was Vertigo. It was a club called Vertigo, a very successful club. So we bought that club and changed it into Glam Slam Los Angeles. And that club was definitely had Prince's hand all over that venue. That one, I think, more so than the other ones, represented his vision and idea. It was definitely a departure from what I had developed
The
in
LA.
Minneapolis. The LA one. That was definitely
Yeah,
a Prince club.
I kind of got that vibe because there's a bunch of clips from that Homer's Odyssey play or whatever that
Yeah.
was, of all the naked women strapped to walls and stuff. And I'm thinking, this is got Prince written all over it at
Yeah,
that
that
time.
had Prince written all over it. It was funny. So the one in Minneapolis, I brought him down one time. So I want you to see the venue, and it's funny because I think he thought I was getting ready to open it, and they were still doing construction. The bars weren't done. I just kind of wanted him to see, you know, how it was coming along, and so we walk in through all this debris and whatnot, and he looks at me and he says, What did you bring me down here for?" I said, "Well, I wanted to see you to see what it looked like." He says, "I don't care what it looks like. I don't want to see it till it's done." And I'm like, "Okay." So, and then, when we opened it, I didn't want the bathtub. I didn't want the motorcycle, because I knew the club had to stand on its own 2 feet. I didn't want him to have to show up every weekend to, perform a concert, in order to make the club work. It had to be its own thing. And it was. So, I think when people came in, and even when he came in, it's like there's no Prince pictures. There was nothing there. But I did. It was a little bit vanity or whatnot. So I had these reliefs made that were on the pillars in that club of his face and my face, and the person that helped me to open it were in there. And
Really? Did
yeah,
anybody, was that kind of done in, very slyly on the?
yeah. If you didn't, it was kind of like a Disney thing. I'm a huge Disney fan. So it was kind of like, let's just put a little, Easter egg in the venue. So
Easter
when you
eggs.
walked in, that was the one, the Prince's face was in that club.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
This was just in the LA one. This was in
No, this was the Minneapolis one, and
oh,
it
the
was
Minneapolis.
only in the Minneapolis one. Yeah.
Wow. I don't know if any of you guys have been into the Glam Slam in Minneapolis, but if you didn't notice that, you missed it.
You missed it.
Definitely
You missed it.
missed it.